What I have here is one of our collection screens. I think you might have seen it last time.
Yep.
What I wanted to go through first was some decisions we made in one of our UI UX calls, and wanted to see how it gelled with the people in this call. Um, More specifically, we were talking last time in the product demo about collections being able to reference other collections. So like, for example, one of Steven's use cases was having a customers collection where you can interact with all the customers underneath, like Nike here or any other customers he has. I think in your use case, it would be more something like TV shows or something TV related, and then having one collection for each one of them.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things we decided on was that we wanted to give people flexibility in how they interact with these structures, these collections. So we want to enable them to reference collections from other collections that are not directly related. So for example, something concrete is like if you're in Siemens, like right here, you're in the Siemens collection and it's selected. You can then go into the prompt bar and say something like compare the marketing strategy of McDonald's. And McDonald's is a sibling of Siemens, but it's not directly under Siemens. But you can still mention it or reference it in some way. And you can compare that to, for example, the Siemens collection and check out both of their marketing strategies at the same time.
Right.
So this
And
would be
Andy,
like, yeah,
is that the
go ahead.
case? Is that the case because both McDonald's and Siemens is under the product marketing collection
That's a
that
good
he can?
question. No, it's not the case. You could go, for example, into all customers
Okay.
and be
Okay.
like, see if any of the existing customers, how do they compare to Siemens, for
Okay.
example, if you're in
Okay.
Siemens. So you could pull in data from other departments, like you're in sales, you could pull in data from marketing or the other way around in a chat.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that
Yeah.
enable
Yeah. That
some?
that that makes perfect sense, and that sounds really great because it'll give me, and I'm sure other people, the option to be able to look at companies with like similar strategies and companies with um, the different strategies and compare the two. So I like that a lot.
Nice to hear you saying that because that's the exact reason why we wanted to allow for that in the first place. Um, One thing that kind of flows from this decision to be able to reference collections from other collections, even though they're not directly related, is that when you start a chat inside of a collection, so for example, I have something in the prompt bar here, I press submit, this will start a new chat in the Siemens collection and ignore the title and what's in here because it's not related to what I had in the prompt bar here. But let's say you press submit and you get like a thread that's inside Siemens. Um, this thread, any new thread you start will be private by default. So these would not be here showing you that you're sharing it with 5+ people.
Okay.
It would be just you by default. And then if, when the time has come after you've submitted a few prompts, maybe seen the results, seen if like this line of questioning is valuable, uh, only then you can explicitly invite the people you want to have access to this thread. So it's private by default. You can choose to invite people into the ones that you think are valuable.
Okay.
We went with this because we think that especially when you pull in data from a place like all customers into Siemens in this thread, um, when you invite people, you're gonna have to give them access to the knowledge that you're referencing for them to be able to see the whole knowledge being used in the thread. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if when you give them access to the thread, Andy, they can go
Yeah,
back to the comments and ask their own questions, or they can only view what was
that's a
being
good
done.
question. We have a lot of screens here around permissions. The short
Okay.
answer is you can choose what kind of access you
Okay.
give to certain people or teams.
Okay.
So some people will have like admin access, some people will be, or teams will be collaborators, and some will be only viewers, depending on who you choose to share them with.
Yeah. You see, Drodio with this is something that I wouldn't want to share with sales because then there would be no purpose for them to get their own, get their own seat because then they can just kind of use my seat.
Mhm.
And um, but I like the fact that you can put, I guess, guidelines in terms of who can get access and who doesn't get access. But um, yeah, it's good for me to share with my team, but I wouldn't want to show this when I'm showcasing it to Lewis or someone, because then he'll say, well, why do I need a seat? You're going to run it. I'm just going to have someone of my team play around with it. And then, okay, that's fine they can play around with it, but then I'm worried what they'll do to the thread and to the information, and sales thinks differently than
Yeah.
research.
Yep.
Hey, Andy, could we talk about this for another minute? Because I just want to play back what I'm hearing from Bearish and see what we would want to do with that. So
Yeah, definitely.
so Bearish is in a collection, and Bearish is asking a question about data that is in a sister collection. So there's the question, and there would be an answer here. And then, so Bearish, this would be private to you because maybe there's a different group of people that have access to this collection versus this one. So we don't want to have this thread be accessible to people that are not in both collections. Now you could re-add people to this thread. I assume, Andy, that's what you're thinking here is like, oh, I do want
Yeah.
to manually add people to this thread. And in which case they would gain access, whoever you add would gain access to both these collections. Now, Bears, when they're added to the thread and they gain access to, let's say, these two collections, what I'm hearing you say is, well, that might make them less interested in getting their own seats because now they're just going to talk to all the data that's in these two without me having actually provision them as paying users. Am I understanding that
Yeah.
accurately?
What I want to do, Trodio, is in a way is like anything that's a research document. Like I want sales to have their own seats, right? But I want sales to input their own documents in here. I don't want them to access anything that's research because
Mm,
that would take away, I don't want to use the word power, but like we
yeah,
have to have control of what we're doing, research and how things are being asked and how things are being presented.
yeah,
So it's fine for them, like when they have their own seat, they can look at their own data. They want to upload the annual report for Budweiser, whatever document they find and talk to it to create their pitch. That's great. But they should come to me and ask me for the research. Like I don't want to give them access to the research. To be honest with you, maybe it's not even something that's necessary. Like I wouldn't even share this with them.
yeah. Let's try to make this more kind of like realistic here. So it sounds like it'd be something we're talking about something like this, where you've got this research collection and you don't want salespeople to be in this research collection. Is that accurate?
Yes, yes.
But you want to be able to ask a question about McDonald's, which maybe that might be sales's collection. You have access to both.
I mean, ideally, yes. But if I didn't, you know, I don't know if I'm like sales is so private with what they have. They're not really sharing much with me. So I think anything that they have, it's kind of like theirs.
Right.
Um, because they're afraid like they're going to lose McDonald's business, they're going to lose whatever business it may be. So I'm just saying, Brody, like this is a great thing. I think it's great for me to use, but I wouldn't necessarily share this. I'm thinking like I wouldn't share this with sales. I wouldn't share it right now with people that you want to sell to because
Grammar,
one,
could you make a sub collection here that's bumped in one that might be called like shared research? And as you're doing that, so Bears, tell me if this is true. What one thing that I'm imagining to be true is you might be willing to share something from research with sales.
yeah,
It could be called like data shared with sales. And if that's a sub collection under research, then it means that you're not sharing all your research with them. That's just your team. But you are saying, I'm willing to share a little bit of it with
yeah,
them. And to your team, it all looks the same because it all flows up to the parent. But to sales, they would only have access to the subset. Sorry if I asked for a hard thing there, team.
It's a little bit hard, but not impossible.
Probably. We can also just kind of like imagine like this says like research data shared with sales or whatever. Would that, so like you would ask questions in here, which the parent has all the child data, but the sales team, you would only use the sub collection with them because you don't want them to get access to all your research data.
correct. I don't want them to have access to all the research data.
So, Bersh, there's another solution here that I think maybe might make more sense is if sales had their own collection called sales,
Yeah,
and it was pretty segregated from the rest of the rest of our org, where only the sales team maybe has permissions to actually view anything in there. And
yeah,
then there's the research, and one solution is that, yeah, there's a shared research sub collection where it's a limited scope of knowledge, but sales could also just re-upload just their own files in the sales collection, and then it would just be in there and not accessible to anyone else,
yeah,
and they won't have access to something outside of sales.
yeah. And Andy, you could run into this issue. Like Paramount is huge, right? And there's several different research teams. We do work together, but we don't always share our documents with each other
Mm-hmm.
because we do compete with each other also for business. So you could run into that where like before BET had VH1, our biggest competitor was VH1. So we weren't necessarily putting our documents in front of everyone to see because we were competing for the same money with VH1. But I do think it's almost like you have to have subgroups of research. Like you have Nickelodeon research, you have BET research, you have whatever that other corporate ad sales research, whatever it may be. I know that sounds like a pain in the ass because it's all research, but like when you click research, it needs to be broken down by the different groups.
Well, it would be up to you, Bears, to
Yep.
create it however you want it to look.
Oh, okay.
So it's you that's making the collections or the sub collections.
Okay. And then I can give access to whoever I want. That makes sense. Okay.
Also
Exactly. Yeah.
Bears, it's a really interesting point. First of all, thank you because like just like learning from our users, you just like you always teach us so much. And the point about seats, I just want to flip that around and say, what if? So, what if you could invite sales into any collections you want them to have access to, and they can use it, but maybe they can only use it a certain amount, right? Maybe they can only use it 20 times before they have to become a paid user, or they can only do a certain limited amount of, like they get rate limited. So they can only, after the first 10 prompts, they have to wait 30 seconds. And it's like, oh, if you become a paid user, you'll have unlimited usage. like if we flip it around so that you actually feel free to invite anybody in to work with that, but then we put limitations on it to get them to become paid users, then it almost becomes a carrot where it's like, oh, this is so great in here. Like, I want to become a paid user so I can do more of it. How would that feel?
I think we can try everything. I think if you give them the carrot, they're going to want me to pay for the carrot instead of them paying for the carrot, because they're going to say, you have 15 seats. You only have a job because of us.
Yeah.
You know? So do the work for us. And that's what we do. We do the work, but there are certain things that they should be doing. Like, I it's not my job to like go through the annual reports and that my job is to help them sell the advertising for the network, right? We perform better than TLC, we perform better than AMC, buy our programs. It's not really my job to do a deep dive into Budweiser and see like what areas are there shortfalls, how can we help them. That's kind of their job to do that. So if we can give them that character, I have no problem. I'm just thinking long term for you.
Yeah.
If I were them, that's what I would come back and say.
Yeah.
And
It's
I'll
so
give you
helpful.
perfect examples. Like we have tools called, MRI and EDO, and um, these are all things that they could pull, but they won't pay for the seat, so we pay for it and we run it for them.
Yeah. We'll have to think more about that. It's a really good point. I mean, thank you, Bears, for helping us think through how the organization might react.
I like the fact of giving them that 1 month of free service, but really tracking them to make sure that they're using it and using it properly, and like seeing how great the tool is and what it can do. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think if you give it to them like that, look, Jody, I have no problem trying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Would you rather limit it by time or by amount of usage for
I
other
would limit
users?
it. See, I think like telling them you have to wait 30 seconds is not a big deal, you know.
Right.
Um, I'm like, okay, I'll wait 30 seconds as long as I don't have to go through and read all the 900-page report, and Storytell's going to do it for me 30 seconds later. You know, I'm just being
Well,
honest.
well, don't think of that as being the usage limitation specifically. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. So there could be features are fully available, and then they are not available after the first 10 times you use them, or that you can do 100 prompts in a day and then you can't do any more until the next day. There's all sorts of ways. So I think I'm more curious to know, like, would you rather say, hey, you've got 30 days to go wild and then you have to become a paid user, or would you rather it be, you kind of can only use it a little bit, but for as long as you like, but you can kind of only use it a little bit, you get kind of like blocked a little bit. There's friction basically,
Yeah,
but it's not bounded to 30 days. So if Lewis's team, uses it for a couple of weeks and then doesn't, and then they try to use it again 6 months later, they still can, versus getting a thing that says you can't.
yeah. So I'm just going to tell you from my experience. Like, so if you next time you're in New York, I'm going to show you my laptop and all the AI tools I have pinned. All of them are free, Drodio.
Right.
So I go in and use them until they tell me I can't use it, and then I'll
Right.
just wait and jump to the next one.
Yeah.
Clever.
You know, that's the only one that I kind of pay for, and I probably don't need it because I have you guys, is Poe, and that's like an aggregator.
Right.
So that's just my thinking. Like,
Speaking of Poe, we should let you know, Bears, we just launched our LLM router today. and we could mention that to you or just share a blog post with you, but we're now choosing the best large language model to answer every query. So I don't know that we need to talk a lot about it today, but I will drop the blog post in so that you know. This is in the new one where you don't
Okay.
have to pick. You know, in the old one, you have to pick.
Yeah.
Now we're picking for you, give you the best answer each time.
Hey, and Bears, just so you know, I'll drop at 1:30 because I'm talking to Casey. So thanks for the intro. But I've Drodio, our faceless host, will carry on with y'all.
I actually have to drop too, but I mean, we can always do guys tomorrow if you want. I have a lot of free time tomorrow.
Erica, I think it'd be great to like have Bears try a couple things on Storytell.ai, the new beta. So
Right.
I'm up for whatever the two of you would like to do.
Yeah, sure. I think when Bearish, you and I can set up time tomorrow for that. To Andy and Graham, I don't know if there's more that you wanted to get feedback in the last few minutes here as well.
No, it's been great. Thank you, Birch.
Yeah, there was just maybe one question that I would have for you, Birch, and obviously from what you're describing, the structure of the collections is important. So, you know, sales having their own collection and research having their own collection and having that division. The ability to chat across both, when you actually go to invite that, there's the potential that, say, in this instance here, you were chatting with the sales and the bet analysis collections. That if you were to invite somebody to those collections that didn't have access to sales, for example, they would get access to not only sales, but all the children underneath it. I'm just wondering how you kind of feel about the possibility for you to share that entire tree through essentially having a conversation and tagging these collections within the chat. Does that make sense?
Maybe I'm not getting it right, Graham, but like, I don't want them touching anything that I'm creating. They can do their own, but
Yeah.
I really don't want to share this with them.
That makes sense.
But again, it would be different. Like, I'm just saying me. That doesn't mean like someone else at another company wants that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we're making permissions granular enough that you'd be able to do that. And
Yeah.
other people from other companies don't need to do that.
And to be honest with you, Graham, like if I shared this with sales, like what you have up on the screen, they probably wouldn't know what to do with. They're gonna want me to come back and say, put it in a PowerPoint, do this, do that. So,
Sure.
you know, that's what it's going to end up to be.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Birch.